Prince of Wales steps forward to give homage to his father the king.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
In a jaw-dropping moment broadcast live across the world, Queen Camilla's face turned visibly pale the instant Prince William was sworn in as the new king. The once celebratory atmosphere quickly shifted to stunned silence as cameras captured Camilla's reaction, a mix of disbelief, fear, and something far deeper. Viewers couldn't believe what they were seeing, and whispers inside the palace suggest this moment wasn't entirely unexpected. But what did Camilla know that the world didn't? Today, we uncover the shocking truth behind her pale reaction. The summons that changed everything. It began with a single knock, discreet, measured, but heavy with meaning. Inside a quiet conference room at Cambridge, Prince William had been mid-sentence, discussing the fine points of carbon emissions with a panel of environmental scientists. His tone had been steady, composed, the voice of a man used to reason and data. But when his private secretary James Harrison appeared at the door, all reason evaporated. Harrison's expression alone broke the rhythm of the room. One subtle hand gesture, urgent, unmistakable, changed everything. "Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me," William said, rising from his seat with the quiet authority that had always set him apart. The corridor outside felt colder, heavier, as if it were almost waiting for what was about to be said. "Sir," Harrison began, his voice low, "you need to return to Buckingham Palace immediately. His Majesty has requested your presence for a matter of constitutional urgency." The phrase struck like a bell in William's mind, sharp, echoing, and ominous. Constitutional urgency. It wasn't an illness. It wasn't grief. It was something else. Something that carried the weight of centuries. "What kind of urgency?" William pressed, his pace quickening toward the exit. "I'm not privy to the details, sir," Harrison replied, his eyes forward. "But the Lord Chancellor, the Attorney General, and senior security officials are involved." 20 minutes later, London blurred past, his car window, rooftops, spires, and the gray pulse of a city unaware of what was unraveling above it. In the silence, William's mind raced. Was this about a threat? A scandal? His father's health? Or something that defied even the structured logic of monarchy itself? None of his questions found answers before the palace gates loomed into view. Catherine was already there, summoned from a children's mental health event in South London. When they met in the corridor outside the king's study, she looked composed but pale, her calmness masking an unease he instantly recognized. "Do you know what this is about?" she whispered, clutching his hand. "Nothing good," he replied quietly, just as Sir Clive Alderton opened the door. "Their Royal Highnesses, His Majesty, is ready to see you now." The king's study was bathed in muted afternoon light. Behind the oak desk, Charles sat motionless, shoulders slightly bowed, papers spread before him like instruments of fate. William had never seen his father look so human, weary, fragile, and strangely at peace. "William, Catherine," the king said softly, "please sit." His next words felt almost impossible to comprehend. A security breach, a constitutional threat, an emergency council convened. The unanimous recommendation, abdication, effective immediately. William's heartbeat roared in his ears. "You're asking me to become king today?" Charles met his gaze, steady and sorrowful. "I'm asking you to save the monarchy. You're the only one the public still believes in." Catherine's hand trembled against his arm. She had spent years preparing for one day, but not this day. Not with their children still so young, not with the nation watching. Then, quietly, William asked the question neither wanted answered. "And Camilla?" Charles exhaled. "She's devastated. 20 years of duty, ending almost before it began." In that moment, the air in the room shifted, not just with grief, but with the strange clarity that accompanies destiny. William realized that this wasn't merely a summons. It was a crossing, a moment where duty and identity collided. And somewhere down the hall, unseen by either father or son, the cameras were already being prepared for a broadcast that would stop the world. And what if that quiet summons wasn't fate's call, but history's trap, waiting to choose its next sacrifice in silence? Keep watching. The Crown. In waiting. The hours that followed felt less like time and more like a storm, a blur of corridors, documents, and decisions that seemed to carry their own gravity. Within Buckingham Palace, the machinery of monarchy roared to life in secret. Constitutional lawyers, royal aides, and government officials moved through the halls with quiet urgency, their faces pale with the weight of history being rewritten in real time. For Prince William, it was as if he'd been thrust into an unfamiliar play without a script. Just hours ago, he had been discussing climate policy. Now he was being briefed on abdication law, succession protocol, and emergency procedures designed for moments that were never meant to happen. Each document handed to him felt heavier than the last, not because of the ink, but because of what it represented: the end of one reign and the beginning of another. The Lord Chancellor's voice echoed in his memory. We require only the constitutional essentials: the oath, the recognition, and the formal investiture of authority. The full coronation can come later. That phrase, "can come later," carried a haunting resonance. It meant there was no time for ceremony, no time for reflection. The monarchy had to move faster than the scandal, faster than speculation, faster than truth itself. Behind closed doors, palace staff transformed the throne room into a stage for history. Curtains were drawn, lighting adjusted, and the regalia, symbols of centuries, quietly brought from storage. Only a handful of people knew what was about to happen. Television networks were notified of a major royal announcement, though even they were left guessing at its nature. While William rehearsed the exact phrasing of the oath, each syllable memorized, each pause practiced, Catherine was fighting a battle of her own. In her private rooms, aides scrambled to prepare the right attire for what would be a coronation stripped of grandeur yet soaked in symbolism. Her schedule was cleared in minutes, engagements cancelled with vague statements about urgent royal matters. She moved through it all in a haze of composure, outwardly calm, inwardly reeling. Then came the moment that neither protocol nor precedence could prepare them for: telling their children. The conversation was small, domestic, and heartbreakingly human. "Will we still live at home?" George asked, his voice quiet but steady. "Yes, darling," Catherine replied, though uncertainty flickered behind her words. "Some things will change, but we'll still be a family." Charlotte wanted to know if her father would still help with her homework. William smiled, a weary, uncertain smile, and promised he would. And little Louis, wide-eyed and innocent, simply asked if this meant he would be a prince now, not knowing the crown's shadow had just stretched over all their futures. In another wing of the palace, Camilla sat alone. The sound of distant preparations drifted through her closed door, muffled, ceremonial, and final. For 2 decades, she had walked a path of quiet endurance, building her place in a world that never fully welcomed her. Now, it was slipping away in the space between headlines and handshakes. Her reflection in the mirror seemed ghost-like, the face of a queen whose reign ended before the nation even knew it had begun. And somewhere between the thunder of footsteps and the whispers of history, a strange calm settled over William. Amid the chaos, he felt the faintest glimmer of something new, not triumph, but acceptance. The crown was no longer an inheritance. It was a responsibility handed to him by necessity, by crisis, and by fate itself. He looked once toward the throne room doors, then to the portrait of his grandmother in the hallway, her eyes serene, almost knowing. And in that fleeting moment, he understood. This was not about power. It was about survival. The monarchy wasn't being passed down. It was being rescued. So what if the true heir isn't the one who inherits the crown, but the one who bears its cost in silence. Stay with us. The Queen without a throne. The palace was silent, save for the faint ticking of a clock, a rhythm that seemed to count down not just the hours, but the final moments of a reign that had barely begun. In her private sitting room, Queen Camilla sat motionless, surrounded by the soft weight of symbols that once defined her place in the royal world. The portraits of her and Charles, taken only months earlier during the coronation, now felt like ghosts watching her, reminders of a dream already dissolving into memory. The invitations to state dinners, the carefully plotted engagements, the diplomatic circles she had slowly won over, all of it was fading, slipping into the quiet irrelevance of royal history. Her lady-in-waiting, Dame Philippa Morrison, entered softly, aware that this was not a day for ceremony but for compassion. Philippa had served Camilla for more than a decade. She had seen her withstand the storms of public judgment, the scrutiny, the whispers, but she had never, not once, seen her cry. Yet now, as she approached, she noticed the glint of tears on Camilla's lashes. "Your Majesty," Philippa began gently, "the ceremony will begin in 2 hours. Shall I help you prepare?" Camilla turned slowly from the window, her expression hollow, her voice stripped of its usual steadiness. "Prepare for what exactly?" she asked. "To stand there and smile while my stepson takes the throne that was meant for my husband? To watch everything I've spent 20 years defending vanish before my eyes?" "The family needs you," Philippa said softly. "They always have." Camilla gave a short, bitter laugh, the kind that comes from a place too deep for anger. "The family," she echoed. "Do you know the irony, Philippa? I spent 2 decades proving I belonged in this family. And now, the very people who once fought to bring me in are the ones pushing me out." She was right. The establishment, those same quiet power brokers who once argued that her marriage to Charles would stabilize the monarchy, had turned against her. The tide that lifted her into acceptance was now pulling her away from the center of power. "You're not being pushed out," Philippa insisted. "You'll still be the king's wife, the king's father's wife." Camilla smiled faintly, the sadness behind it cutting deeper than words. "And what will that make me?" The former queen consort. "A title people will forget before the ink on the papers dries. I'll be a footnote, remembered only for how short my time lasted." It was the cruelest twist of fate. She had spent years enduring ridicule, clawing back dignity through relentless work and quiet grace. Becoming queen consort had been her final vindication, the moment she believed her past no longer defined her. But now, stripped of that role, it felt as though the world had rewound itself. The same whispers had returned, only quieter and more poisonous. "The public will understand," Philippa offered, though both women knew how hollow the reassurance sounded. "Will they?" Camilla asked, her voice breaking as she began to pace. "Or will they see this as proof that I was never meant to be here? That this is fate correcting itself? That Diana's son was always meant to take it all back?" The name lingered in the air like a ghost neither dared acknowledge too long. Diana, the shadow Camilla could never quite escape. Even in death, she had remained the people's queen. Now her son's rise would be seen as destiny fulfilled, the restoration of what was lost. Camilla stopped by the mirror. Her reflection looked unfamiliar, distant, like a woman rehearsing her own disappearance. She straightened her shoulders, wiping the tears away. "I should dress," she said finally, her tone cool again. "Whatever happens next, they will not see me break." And as Philippa moved to gather her gown, the faint murmur of preparation echoed through the palace walls, the sound of a new king being crowned, and a queen quietly erased from her own story. How could a woman who fought for decades for her place vanish so quietly as history applauded another's rise to the throne? Stay tuned. The crown falls silent. The throne room of Buckingham Palace had never felt so heavy. It was as if the air itself understood the weight of what was happening. the quiet collapse of one reign and the reluctant birth of another. The centuries-old machinery of monarchy, so precise and deliberate, moved with mechanical grace, even as the emotion in the room made every second feel raw and human. The abdication ceremony, hastily arranged yet unflinchingly dignified, unfolded like a tragic play, with no rehearsal. At the center sat King Charles, his expression solemn but resolved. Before him lay the documents that would end the reign he had waited 73 years to begin. The quill trembled faintly between his fingers as he read the words "destined" to echo through British history. I, Charles Philip Arthur George, do solemnly and sincerely renounce and abdicate all my rights, privileges, and dignities as king. His voice was steady, yet beneath it ran a sorrow too deep for disguise. I call upon Almighty God to witness this my renunciation, he continued, and I pray that he will graciously bless my son William as he assumes the sacred trust I now relinquish. The sound of his signature, ink scratching against parchment, was followed by a silence so profound it seemed to fill the room. The Prime Minister, the Archbishop of Canterbury, senior ministers, Commonwealth envoys, and members of the royal family watched, frozen between reverence and disbelief. No one had imagined this moment, not in their lifetimes, not under these circumstances, but it was Camilla who drew every eye. The Queen Consort sat just a few feet away, her composure unraveling by degrees. Against the deep violet of her dress, her skin looked ghostly pale. As Charles's pen touched the final line, her breath caught, her chest rising once, sharply, as though the sound might break her. Beside her, Dame Philippa placed a steadying hand on her arm, her gesture discreet yet desperate. The cameras, unkind and unrelenting, captured everything. For Camilla, every stroke of her husband's pen was a stroke through her own name, erasing years of effort, resilience, and quiet triumph. The title she had fought for with grace and restraint was being stripped away, not through scandal or failure, but through the cold mechanics of crisis. Then came the oath. The Archbishop's voice rang clear, formal, ancient. "William Arthur Philip Lewis, will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, your other realms and territories, according to their laws and customs?" "I solemnly promise so to do," William answered. His tone was firm, composed, but his eyes betrayed the gravity of the moment, the shock of inheritance, without choice. Camilla watched him rise, the young man she had once known as a boy now stepping into history. When the crown was placed upon his head, the smallest movement escaped her, a sharp inhale followed by a single tear that slid down her cheek. She brushed it away instantly, but not before it caught the light, a glint of sorrow immortalized by every camera lens in the room. "God save the king," the dignitaries proclaimed, their voices echoing across the marble walls, into corridors, and beyond palace gates to a world holding its breath. In that echo, something within Camilla fell silent. She was no longer the Queen Consort, only the wife of a former king. Around her, history continued to move, relentless and unsentimental. Catherine stood poised beside William, her composure unshaken, though a fleeting shadow crossed her face, the quiet awareness that their lives, too, had just changed forever. And as the hall erupted in ceremony, Camilla sat perfectly still, her gaze locked on the man who had just surrendered both crown and purpose. In the space of 8 hours, she had watched her world dissolve, from majesty to memory, from reigning queen to silent witness. But beneath that stillness was something unspoken, not defeat, but a haunting calm. As the applause swelled and the cameras turned, one truth lingered quietly in her eyes. Power might shift, but dignity, once earned, cannot be abdicated. And so, when the crown fell and silence claimed the throne, what truly remained? Power's echo, or a woman's unbroken will? Stay glued. Echoes of a vanished crown, The palace had never felt so crowded, yet so hollow. In the hours following the emergency coronation, Buckingham Palace was a theater of hurried whispers and flashing cameras. The world had just witnessed the unimaginable, King Charles's abdication and the sudden rise of King William V. Inside the throne room, staff moved with quiet urgency, trying to steady a royal household that had been turned upside down in a single afternoon. The air still carried the scent of incense and the echo of the Archbishop's final words, "God save the King," words that seemed to haunt Camilla most of all. While the new king spoke to the nation with calm assurance, his speech crafted in haste but delivered with the gravity of destiny, Camilla sat motionless. The shock had frozen her into silence. Her face, pale, unguarded and weary, became the image that defined the day. Around her, Dame Philippa and the ladies-in-waiting subtly formed a shield, protecting her from the relentless gaze of the cameras. Yet nothing could protect her from the realization settling in her chest. The crown had moved on, and so had history. As William vowed to serve with humility and determination, Camilla's world quietly disintegrated. Every privilege, every appointment, every carefully built network was slipping away. The invitations would stop. The charities would find a new patron. Even her staff would be reassigned by morning. The woman who had spent decades carving her place within the monarchy was now once again on its periphery. 6 months later, the palace had adjusted to its new rhythm. King William had emerged as a steady, reform-minded monarch, while Queen Catherine, graceful and composed, seemed born for her role. Their public warmth rekindled confidence in a shaken nation. Yet behind the elegance of renewal, there lingered a quiet sorrow. The monarchy had survived, but not without cost. For Charles, the abdication had brought unexpected peace. Freed from the weight of duty, he devoted himself to charity and the environment, appearing lighter, almost liberated. But for Camilla, the loss was heavier than the crown itself. She told Philippa one evening, voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know who I am anymore." Her identity, once intertwined with the throne, had dissolved. Watching Catherine step effortlessly into the role she once held was a test of silent endurance. Still, public compassion softened her fall. The viral image of her pale face, captured at the very moment her reign ended, became a symbol of human fragility beneath royal formality. And yet, beneath the grief, something unexpected began to stir. Away from the golden ceremony, Camilla discovered what power could not give her: freedom. No longer bound by protocol or public expectation, she was for the first time in decades simply herself. The crown had vanished, but perhaps for Camilla, that was where her truest reign could finally begin. And how could losing a crown become the moment she truly found herself? The quiet beginning of a reign no one expected. The last conversation. The corridors of Buckingham Palace had never felt quieter. In the stillness of his private study, King Charles sat beneath the dim glow of a single lamp, his hands resting on the abdication papers that would soon erase his reign from history. 2 years and 3 months. That was all that had lasted. 73 years of waiting, of restraint, of duty, all dissolving into ink on parchment. The irony bit deep. He had become the oldest heir to ascend the throne, only to face the unbearable truth that he might also be the first to relinquish it under pressure. The morning's security briefing replayed in his mind like a relentless echo. Intelligence officials had uncovered something far darker than scandal: a covert operation by foreign agencies collecting sensitive material on the royal family, an arsenal of secrets ready to detonate. The danger wasn't personal, it was institutional. One wrong move could shatter public faith in the monarchy itself. The only solution, as grim as it sounded, was sacrifice. When Charles finally rose from his chair, it wasn't with the steadiness of a king, but with the fragility of a man who understood that history's mercy was never guaranteed. He went to find Camilla, his anchor, his ally, through decades of scrutiny and survival. She was in her sitting room, surrounded by notes for a charity speech, her face lighting up when he entered, until she saw his eyes. "Charles, what's happened?" she asked softly. He told her everything: the surveillance, the threat, the ultimatum, and the final recommendation: abdication. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavier than any crown. Camilla's hands trembled as she rose, pacing toward the window. "They want you to give up everything. After everything we've endured?" "It isn't about want," he said quietly. "It's about survival. William can take the crown untainted. Begin again where I cannot." Her breath caught. "And us? What do we become in that clean slate?" Charles didn't answer, but the silence said it all, that in protecting the crown, he would lose her world too. And somewhere in that silence, Camilla realized something deeper. In the story of kings and heirs, the crown always survives, but love rarely does. So what do you think truly happened behind those palace doors? Was it destiny, betrayal, or quiet sacrifice that changed the crown forever? Share your theory in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.